to the Study Penguin podcast, a show all about helping students learn more in less time. My name is Maximilian Hart, coming to you from studypenguin.com. And today we're going to be talking about to-do lists, why they're important, how to keep one, as well as at the end, a couple apps that you can use to help keep yourself organized that I have found useful and that other people have found useful. I have done some of the legwork and research for you, and we're going to be talking about those at the end. But first, why they're important. So I've talked to a lot of people that seem to not really care about a to-do list of any kind. They keep it all in their head, or they just like, no, I just have this for this thing over here and this for this thing over here. This is most of my students, actually. They don't have one unified to-do list. Some of them have a planner and they put stuff on there, and that is a completely viable way of doing things, by the way. But most people don't have any kind of organized to-do list. Well, but I think they're important to have, right? Obviously, this is one of those things where not everything works for everybody, and take it with a grain of salt. But I genuinely believe that 95% of people out there need a to-do list if they want to be any kind of efficient. Some people don't need one. If you're a student, you need one. It's just the straight up fact of life. For a few reasons. First off, a to-do list keeps you organized. It keeps you from just having a jumble of stuff and you spend a day and you're really not quite sure what happened. A to-do list is like step number one. And like it's like learning the alphabet of organization is a to-do list. It helps you manage your time. It helps you not get distracted from things. So it keeps you organized ultimately, so that way you can look at things and plan better and plan backwards and break things into chunks. But it all starts with writing down all the stuff you got to do, because until you write it down, you don't really know, and you can't see it, and you can't kind of internalize it and figure out exactly what it is that you need to do and to schedule it out. So it keeps you organized. It also helps you keep your priorities straight. I have a lot of things going on in my life, and the only way for me really to make sure I'm spending time doing the important stuff and not spending time doing not important stuff is to keep a to-do list. And we'll talk about this in a little bit. Principle number 2 of one. But it really does help keep your priorities straight, because if at the beginning of every day you write down on your to-do list the number one thing that you want to do, that's the one most important thing that you want to get done that next day, it's going to happen, and you're going to be spending time on those things that are a greater priority and less time on those things that aren't as big of a priority. So to-do list keeps you organized to keep your priorities straight. They also keep you from getting distracted and wasting time. This is true more or less depending on how you keep a to-do list. Some people will put like a small post-it note on their computer, and that'll keep them from getting distracted because they've got that post-it note there telling them, hey, this is more important than whatever it is you're about to surf on. But just the simple fact that you have one helps you stay focused. If when you finish a task, you're checking it off that to-do list, that's huge, because you're checking things off. And that little, I checked it off, that provides a rush of dopamine, and that's addictive. So checking things off a to-do list is literally an addictive activity. So going for that can help you stay focused and help keep you from getting distracted and help keep you from wasting time. If you've got a lot of things, work expands to the time that we give to it. Leisure expands to the time that we give to it. If you have nothing planned in a day, you will do nothing that day. If you have 10 things planned on that day, you'll probably get at least 7 of them done, barring some weird accident. So they help keep you from getting distracted. They help you keep you from wasting time. Now, I'm not saying that wasting time is necessarily bad. Recreation and leisure and the pleasure activities and having a good time, that is important, and we need recreation to recreate ourselves and our energies. But you can plan that. There's nothing saying you can't play video games on your to-do list. Absolutely nothing saying you can't do that. And I sometimes do. Just throwing it out there. I do. I do streams and stuff, and it's on the to-do list. Hey, stream Skyrim tonight. All right. It's fun. It's not like work. It's leisure activities, but it's on the to-do list. So schedule your fun, and that way you know you're going to get to it as well. And the final reason, besides to keep your organized and priorities straight and to keep you from getting distracted and wasting time, to-do lists are important, I think, primarily for this, for peace of mind. You know, if you keep a to-do list, and when you get a new activity or thing that you need to do and you put it on that to-do list, you know it's going to get done. You know you're not going to forget about it. You're not going to have this thing happen where like, oh, I forgot to do that. No, because it's on your to-do list and you won't take it off there until you've done it. So a to-do list, in my opinion, is the most useful thing for my life, is for peace of mind. When you have a to-do list and you put things on it, you'll never have that feeling in the back of your head. Am I supposed to be doing something right now? Or that I feel like I've got something coming due, but I don't know what it is. You'll never have that again if you keep a to-do list and you keep up with a to-do list. So they keep you organized. They help keep your priorities straight. They keep you from getting distracted and wasting time. And they give you just a peace of mind that you're not forgetting anything, that you can't buy peace of mind except through a to-do list in this case, right? My story related to this, my father-in-law was a CPA, was an accountant, and in his mind that was the number one thing he gave people. It wasn't, he's like, I do your taxes, whatever. But what I really give you isn't just like doing your taxes. And this is the way he approached this whole business. It's like, that's not my business. My business is peace of mind. When I do people's taxes, they don't have to worry about them. They don't have to worry if they did it right. They don't have to worry if they could have gotten a bigger refund. It's peace of mind. And a to-do list is like that. It gives you peace of mind. You're never going to forget stuff. You're not going to forget to do things if you have a to-do list. And that's the best part. There is one downside of a to-do list. And this comes if you've got a lot of things on your plate and you start adding to this to-do list, you'll end up with like this massive to-do list, and it can be intimidating and stressful. It really can. But one way of kind of combating this, okay, is to keep two lists. One, a large list of everything you got to do, like ever. But a daily list. Every evening, you sit down, you come up with, what do I need to do tomorrow? What's the number one thing I need to get done tomorrow? Put that at the top. And then the other things that you want to get done. And you can plan it out. I'm going to do this in the morning, and this in the afternoon, and this in the evening. You can do that like that if you'd like. But having that daily list there, and then you don't have to look throughout that day. You're not being like, oh gosh, this whole list. All you have to do is, I'm going to get this stuff done on this daily list. And if you just get that stuff done on that daily list, that big list will eventually all get done. It's kind of magical. So that's why, to-do lists are important for a number of reasons, right? They give you all these things, but the practical how to actually do one, okay? How to keep a to-do list. Just do it. Like, it's not rocket science. First off, it's not rocket science. Just start writing down the stuff you got to do and crossing it off when you're done. That it's most basic. That's all it is. That's it. But there are a few principles that can make the process a little bit easier. 3 principles. First, write everything on it. Don't put, like, if you're like, oh, I got to do this, but I'll do that later, or it's not something that I really need to put on. Like, no. Put everything on that list. This is part of the peace of mind. You don't have to remember something, and like the fewer things you have to like keep stored up in your brain or remembering in your brain, your life just gets a lot easier. So just write it down on the list. You won't have to worry about remembering it anymore. So write everything on the list. That's principle 1. Principle 2, sort the list by priority. Okay. So you can do this a number of different ways. And this is easier with some electronic ways of to-do lists and some apps that we'll talk about in a minute than it is just on paper. But you can still do this on paper, right? You could do like that long list and then every day write out, like in order of priority, the few things that you want to get done that next day. Or you could every day write your full list again. I wouldn't recommend that. That would take a long time. But there are a few ways that you can do this. One is called the ABCD method, right? So when you write something down, if it's an ultra important, high priority, urgent thing, put an A next to it when you write it down. And then B, and then C, and then D are like, I'd kind of like to get to this at some point. Hey, that'd be kind of nice to do. Those are D level things. So basically you have 4 tiers of importance as you go down. And then every day you just start off with all the A's. Get the A's done. Don't worry about the B's and C's and D's. Just do the A's. And you can just scan down the left-hand side and just find all the things that are marked A and do it that way. And then go down and find all the things marked B and do it that way. So the ABCD method, that's one method. That's the one that I used when I was in my early teens. It worked pretty well for me too. Something that a good friend of mine found and that he was a youth minister and used this to kind of organize how he had all these things to juggle. He used something called the Quadrant Method, which is you take like a whiteboard or something and you break it down into quadrants, like so into fourths. And he would do this in his office. And in the top left corner, or like the top left corner was like important and urgent. And the top right corner was important, not urgent. And the bottom left-hand corner was not urgent, but important. And then what was it? The top, it was a quadrant of important, not important, urgent, not urgent. Leave it at that. You can figure it out yourself. It's not too difficult. But basically, as he would do things, he would be there, yeah, this is important, but I don't need to do it right this second. So he would put that in the important but not urgent column. And then the things that were not important and not urgent got put in that fourth column. And honestly, if he didn't get to them, he didn't get to them, and it was fine. But that way, you always are starting with the important, urgent stuff. It's ultimately the same thing as ABCD method, just more visual. So for those of you that are more of a visual type person, that's something that may help you, is to use this quadrant method. But either way, no matter what you do, you want to be sorting your to-do list by priorities. Have the things that you want to do first, or that you need to do most urgently, on top, and then the less important things down below that. Principle number 3. So number 1, write everything on it. Number 2, sort things in order of priority. Number 3 is break things into smaller chunks. Okay, this is something that has to do with 2 kind of subset things. One is the Pomodoro Method. If you've not heard of the Pomodoro Method, you owe it to yourself to learn about it. There are a number of apps and resources and things online. I have an article on studypenguin.com I'll link to in the notes or description or whatever for this. So check it out. The Pomodoro Method is something that can really help. You get a lot more done than you ever thought you could. Really and truly. So aim for things that don't take you more than about 30 minutes in one to-do list entry, right? So if it's, for example, if it's study for anatomy, and you have like 3 hours of studying for anatomy to do, maybe break that down into 4 or 5 different subtopics. So study chapter 6 notes. That's one thing. That'll take you about half an hour. Study chapter 7 notes. Study vocabulary, right? So break things down into things that won't take more than about 30 minutes. So the reason for this is twofold. First, that's that Pomodoro Method technique, which revolves around things being about 25 minutes long. But secondly, for that exact reason I mentioned earlier with like that dopamine rush, being able to check something off of your to-do list is an incredible motivator. And this is something that I would recommend, even if you keep a digital to-do list, don't necessarily just delete things. Move them to a done list. Because seeing that list of things that you've done grow over the course of a day can be very motivational for you. You're like, yeah, I'm rocking. And then it's motivation to keep you going. So breaking things into smaller, more manageable chunks, it gets it easier to start, it's easier to finish, and it's easier to check that off, and motivates you to continue doing that and getting the things done that you want to get done that day. So write everything out, sort it by priorities, and then break things into smaller chunks. So in terms of where, right? So it's important to keep a to-do list. It's pretty easy to keep a to-do list, but where do you keep a to-do list? Honestly, the easiest option, just grab a piece of paper. Like grab a yellow legal pad or something and have that be your big to-do list, and then grab a note card or a post-it note every day. I did this for like 2 years. I just had a post-it note that I wrote on, like a stack of Post-its, and every day I would write, here's the things that I need to do tomorrow. Every night I would sit down and do this, and I'd fold that Post-it note in half, and I would put it on my wallet. And then when I got ready the next day, I would just stick that in my pocket. I didn't have it in my wallet, just in my pocket where I could pull out that piece of paper and cross off as I finished. That was my to-do list method for almost 2 years, and it worked great. I got all sorts of stuff done. So it doesn't have to be anything high-tech or fancy or some app or anything. Just writing it down on a piece of paper, small scrap of something that you can carry with you, That's it. That's all you need. And then you can use the backside of that to write new stuff that you want to add to your full list later on, right? So at its most basic, a piece of paper or a note card or Post-it note or something like that. But if you want to go the electronic route, all right, some apps that might be helpful for you. First and foremost, this is what I'm currently using, which I have found immensely helpful, is Trello. Trello is a website, Trello.com. It's a website that you can use that also has a fully featured Android and Apple apps for phone and for iPad and for all that stuff. It's incredible. It really is. It's basically, you can keep cards and lists, and then in one card, you could add a checklist to like a sub checklist. So it's like, hey, write my paper. Then you could have a checklist of things underneath that are each those smaller chunks, right? So it's one of those things that it's just an incredibly useful tool. You will find a use for Trello, I guarantee it. And one thing that I do like about it is that it's quick. The app doesn't take a long time to pull up. So if I want to add something to my to-do list on Android, you actually have the ability to pin like a widget type thing. And I have add card as a widget on Android, and you can literally add something to your to-do list just like that. It's very easy to go open up the app and just move one thing from to-do to done. It's great. I thoroughly recommend Trello. It's a wonderful option. But there are some other options that are kind of more traditional. This is specifically for to-do lists. Trello can be used for a lot of different things, but specifically to-do lists. Todoist is a very popular option. Todoist is probably one of the most fully featured ones you'll find out there. Is Todoist, Todoist. And then TickTick they're very similar and have comparable like degrees of functionality. There are some slight differences depending on what exactly it is that you want out of your to-do list app. But that any.do is another one that is basically a fully only to-do list. So Trello, TickTick, Todoist, any.do, OneNote is actually very useful. If you're a student, I would actually recommend thinking about using OneNote because it's nice having everything in one spot. And OneNote is a fantastic place for organizing class notes and things by folders and whatnot. So OneNote, if you're already using it for class notes, is a great spot to put a to-do list. Same thing with if you're using like Google's OneNote equivalent, which the name of which escapes me. I think it's Google Notes or something like that. I can't remember the name of it. But if you're already using something that you can for taking notes or something on your computer that you can use, that has an app on your mobile device of choice that you can use for a to-do list, just use that. Because having things in one place is often worth the trade-off of slightly more features that you could get with something else. Finally, if you have an Alexa, Echo, whatever, or a Google Home Assistant or something like that, those sync with to-do lists. You can say, hey, add such and such thing to my to-do list, and it will add it. It's incredibly useful for that first, for that last, peace of mind bit, not forgetting something. As soon as somebody, I got to remember to do this. Hey, put this on my to-do list, and you won't forget it. So I would recommend if you have a Amazon voice device or Google Voice device, I realize I said the hated word A, but if you have one of those voice assistant devices, you can find skills for that will link with various apps. You can actually, if you use if this then that, ifttt.com, you can use Alexa to link with Trello. And you can say, hey, add this to my to-do list, and it will add it to your to-do list on Trello. So there's some really cool things that you can do if you want to dig into the time with that, if you are into that. But a to-do list is something that is useful no matter where you are on the technological range, from a piece of paper and a postcard or Post-it note to Alexa voice, do things for me, and everywhere in between. I recommend Trello. Check it out. Check out any other option that you've got. But ultimately, just start keeping a to-do list. It'll take you 5 minutes right now just to sit, write out all the things that you want to get done, and then just start keeping track of it. And then keeping track of the things that you've done, it helps you feel more accomplished and realize how much you do actually do, and sometimes how much you don't do. So keep a to-do list. It'll help keep you organized. It'll help keep your priorities straight. It'll keep you from getting distracted and wasting time. And it gives you peace of mind that you're not forgetting anything. Just write things on it, sort them by priorities, and break things into manageable chunks that you can do and check off and get things accomplished, whether you use an app or a postcard or a post-it note or just the scrap of paper you ripped out of your notebook. Do something to keep a to-do list. It'll help organize your life. It'll ultimately make you a better student, a better person at whatever job it is that you've got, a better, if you're trying to build your own thing, it'll help keep you on track for that. I cannot recommend it enough. Start a to-do list, keep up with it, and you will not regret it. If you have any questions for me, you can actually ask them. If you'd like to call into the show, you can do that on anchor.fm. They have an app that you can literally call into the podcast. I know it's like a phone caller type thing. So if you have questions, you can call in there using the Anchor app. Alternatively, you can just ask me on Twitter. Just be like, hey, I have a question for the Study Penguin podcast. And you can throw it on there. And I will respond to it on the podcast. So thank you, Liz, so much for watching, for listening. And I will see you all next week for another episode. Thank you for listening. If you did enjoy it, add likes and thumbs up and reviews on iTunes and all that stuff, wherever it is that you happen to be listening to this. I appreciate it. I appreciate you listening and taking the time, and hopefully it inspired you to give to-do lists a shot if you haven't already. If you have, let me know. Hit me up on Instagram or Twitter or whatnot, and tell me, what your experience with to-do lists is. Is this something that you use? Is this something that you have abandoned, maybe? And let me know what you think. Thank you so much for joining me on the Study Penguin podcast, and I will talk to you all next time. Until then, have a wonderful rest of your day or night or evening or whatever it is, wherever you are all around the world. And don't forget, never stop learning.